Listen to this episode if you want 2026 to be the year that your annual planning finally sticks. I know it's almost the end of the year. Maybe you've done your annual planning already. Maybe you haven't quite started it. You're doing it this week and this weekend between Christmas and New Year's. Today we're talking about is how to create an annual plan that you actually stick to. You can create the most beautiful vision board, most aesthetic Notion dashboard, the most detailed plan, and still not follow through. And the problem isn't motivation. It's not dedication. It's not discipline. It's not you not feeling like doing it. The problem is the way that you're planning. And so today we're doing a step 2 of our 2026 planning series, all about breaking down the indicators that your planning process needs to change, the real root cause behind why you're never actually sticking to your annual plans, and how to actually create a strategic plan for 2026 that you will follow through on, not abandon by February 1st, okay? We're diving into this today. I'm excited about it. This is a topic that I really love, a good annual plan. I've never been a vision board gal. I am, of course, a planner, a strategizer. If you know me, my brain is just a builder. So I'm constantly kind of doing these plans. And this is what, over the years of doing many annual plans for my business, for my family's business, for all of my clients' businesses, this is where I really see the biggest changes come to life. And so we are diving into this today. Like I said, this is a step 2 of a 3-part series. Last episode, we talked about the consumer trends that are going to be necessary to have in 2026, basically what your consumer is going to demand of you in these next 12 months. And next episode that comes out is going to be all about what our trends and our predictions are from a strategy perspective of how we actually have to execute some of this. Today, of course, we're talking about planning. Next time, we are talking about strategies that are a little bit more in the nitty gritty. So if you haven't listened to that other episode, I would recommend doing that one after. They don't need to be listened in unison or in the series, but I would recommend listening to all of them if you are planning for a really big year in business in 2026. Before we dive in too deep, I just want to say hello to welcome anybody that might be new here. My name is Madison Page. I am a business growth specialist. I work with product-based business owners to help them become the next industry disruptor, the next household name in their industry. I help you with marketing, with branding, with sales, with pricing, with community building, whatever it may be. We take a very community-driven approach here. My podcast is very conversational. We put out new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. And so we have 400 plus episodes out there for you to binge if you are looking for your 2026 to be more strategized, more structured, and just building your sales on top of each other. So I'm so happy you're here. Welcome. First things first, I want to talk about the indicators that you need to switch up in your planning process somewhere. You know, the indicators here, the questions that we're asking ourselves, if there is kind of something that is actually wrong within your planning every year. The next one is we're going to talk about the main root cause issue. There's really 2, which is why you may never stick to your plan or why your plan never seems to actually come to life. And then we're going to talk about what a real plan really looks like, how to do it the right way, and what are my 8 steps to an annual plan that actually sticks. If you are new here, you might not know that everything I do, I teach from a lens of your life should be enjoyable this year. So you'll hear me kind of talk about that. I call it the freepreneur lifestyle. We are building our business for freedom. 80% of business owners, when they ask, why are you building this business? They say freedom. And so I want to help you build that freedom. And freedom does not look like working 180 hours a week. I don't even know how many hours are in a week. It might be less than 180, but you get the point, right? So what we're talking about here today is definitely through a lens of reaching really big goals, being incredibly ambitious, but also being realistic of what we have as a person, the capacity that we have there as well, and making sure that this is a year that you grow tremendously. My clients have industry-leading growth strategies, but we are also taking into account your life and your lifestyle. But the indicators that you might need to switch something up in your planning every year is that every January, you create a plan, which you probably did in 2025, but you abandon it within a few weeks every single year. by the time February 1st hits, you're like, I don't even know what's on that plan. I'm just doing my thing. Next one is maybe the last few years, your goals have looked the same. You wanted to double your revenue. You wanted to have 10,000 followers on Instagram. You wanted to build out a team. You wanted to be more streamlined. You wanted everything to feel easier. But the next year comes around and you never really fully follow through or see them fully come to life. And so you're constantly feeling like you're planning for the exact same objectives, which basically tells me is that nothing fundamentally is really changing and we're not actually moving that needle or the vehicle forward. The third one is that you set goals that sound good, but they aren't actually really tied to your real capacity or your current business model. You're like, yeah, I'm going to gain massive brand awareness this year and I'm going to get 100,000 followers. They're aspirational, but they might not actually be strategic. The next one is that you plan based on vibes, not data. If you plan for 2026 without analyzing your data for 2025, and that can be a P&L, that can be a dashboard on Shopify, that can be, more customized data in your emails, on your marketing, we need to look at data in order to make data-driven decisions. We did an episode on this a couple of weeks ago that it would be really helpful. If you don't know anything about data, that is going to be really helpful for you because data is how you make decisions. Data is how you plan. That will give you a good insight as to how we utilize data to plan. The next one is that you make to-do lists, but not growth plans. So if your vision board right now kind of looks like, when we're planning annually for 2026, you're like, I'm going to post 5 reels a week. I'm going to finally start to show my face. I'm going to be more relatable on my Instagram stories. I'm going to send an email a week. That is a to-do list. That is the bottom of the planning process when we are actually looking for the umbrella, the zoomed out approach of what we're actually doing. We're going to get into this a little bit later. Make sure that you stick around and I'll kind of explain the major differences there. Last but not least is you look at your annual plan and you feel overwhelmed, uninspired, not excited about it, instead of supportive, motivated, and can't wait to hit the ground running. When I look at my annual plan, I am seriously jittery with excitement of what's to come. This is a question I have my clients all the time when they come to me and they say, this is my plan for 2026. This is what I'm launching. This is what my focus is. I look at it and I say, are you excited about this? And what their response is to that question dictates how we move forward. If you're uninspired, if you're apathetic, if you're kind of overwhelmed by it, if you're like, whoo, this is way too much, I don't even know how I'm going to do that. If that's how you're going into the year, you're going to lose it halfway through. You're going to lose it a couple of weeks in. We should feel energized with our plan. Your goals should not stress you out. They should excite you. And if those are some of the things that you're feeling, that's an indicator that we might need to kind of change things up a little bit. So really, when we look at this, the root major causes of some of these things come down to 2 major players. It's not a lack of discipline. You're not able to stick to this plan, not because you're not disciplined, not because you're not motivated, not because of your ADHD brain, something that I hear a lot of. Usually the root cause of abandoning your annual plan is one of these 2. One of them being that you plan for a fantasy version of yourself. You didn't actually plan for reality. What we see people do so very often is that you plan for you to be 100% of your best self every single day. Most people create their annual plans based on their most motivated days, what the money they would love to make. They basically are planning based on aspirations and dreams, not always reality. They aren't actually looking at the current picture. They're never actually reflecting on what's actually going on. Oftentimes, it really is just stuck in this dream. We're going to talk about this in a second, but there's a planning kind of strategy that I learned by someone. His name is George Bryant. He's lovely. I went to his retreat a couple of weeks ago, and he does all of his planning based on 3 models: the dreamer, the planner, and the critic. And so many of you guys get stuck in the dreamer, and then you're like, all right, let's make it happen. That's what I'm going to do. But the dreamer is in the most dreamy, aspirational state, which it's really good to dream. But sometimes we have to bring ourselves back down to reality. We have to look at our energy. We have to look at our responsibilities. We have to look at your bandwidth. Are you working a 9 to 5? Do you have a family? Do we have all of these other things? What can we actually accomplish in this strategy within a year? Your plan isn't failing. You're kind of setting yourself up for failure because you don't actually have the structure to execute what you want to execute. So we're going to go back and we're going to talk about this a little bit, but this is why many people stick with their plan to 2 to 6 weeks and then they fall off, not because that they have a lack of discipline, but because their plan was rooted on the absolute best days. This is what I'm going to execute every single day. This is like saying, hey, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. And so tomorrow I'm going to start training like an Olympian. And you are working out for 3 hours a day. Your body isn't ready for it. Your business isn't ready for it. You are not ready for it. We have to implement things sometimes intentionally, marginally. And it's not to say that we want to take things slow. You guys know I'm a quick actor. I'm all about quick, messy action, but it can't be so messy that we actually shoot ourselves in the foot. What ends up happening sometimes is that when we build a business, when we dream so big and all of a sudden things start to happen, we actually aren't fully ready for it in the strategies and the systems, which will eventually just crumble your entire business. And so what we have to look at is we have to look at realistic capacity. If you're telling me you're a mom, you're a dad, as well as you work a 9 to 5, and you are also trying to 20x your business, you're trying to build your business from, $10,000 to $10 million in 2026. I'm going to say that's great, but I'm also going to say that's going to mean that you have to change how you're living because business does take time. Some of these goals, we are so aspirational, which is great. I love a dreamer. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes they do have to be realistic. If you've ever heard of SMART goals, the R in SMART goals is realistic. It has to be something that can actually be done with the amount of capacity that you have. This goes back to really understanding your timeline, your strategy, deeper than just looking at the data, looking at the benchmarks. If your business is growing 30 to 40% year over year, I don't really want you to grow that much more unless you're willing to have major growing pains. So it's okay to not think about your business absolutely quadrupling, 10xing this year if you don't have the capacity for that, if you don't want to hire people. Oftentimes, we don't actually look at the data. Oftentimes, we don't actually look at the benchmarks. Oftentimes, we are just saying, I would love to make $1 million this year. My question to that is why? Why do you want to make $1 million this year? Is there a reason to it? And it's okay if there is, but we have to make our plan according to that because it's going to require different levels of capacity for different levels of goals. The next one is the root cause is that the plan you thought you made was actually just a to-do list, which we talked a little bit about already. If your plan right now looks like outputs, looks like I want to post 5 times a week, I'm going to grow my Instagram, I'm going to start an email list, I'm going to get in one major retailer, I'm going to launch 5 new things, I'm going to show up on my stories every day, I'm going to be more relatable, I'm going to start showing my face. Those are objectives. Those are the how-to. We need to actually zoom out. What are we actually trying to accomplish? Are we accomplishing brand awareness? Are we trying to build a community? Are we trying to increase conversions? None of those things are measurable. We want our, following to increase by 10% every month. When we're talking about a plan, your plan shouldn't look like a to-do list. Right now, these are actions. They're tasks. They are the how we execute greater objectives, but they are not actually the objectives themselves. And so a major root cause of having an annual plan that you stick to is because you just have a task list. So then you're just stuck executing without actually ever knowing what your greater plan is, because this is really where a strategy is rooted in. What we're talking about here is how we execute a strategy. So when somebody tells me, hey, Maddie, I want to grow my business, I say, great. These are the objectives we have to do. We have to basically build into, whether it's growing an audience, whether it's nurturing a community, getting our marketing solid, building a team, systemizing your behind the scenes, increasing retention, increasing average order value. Those are plans that we want to achieve. How we do that is what you have in your planning right now. So a major root cause problem to people not actually being able to execute their plan is because they don't actually have a plan. They have a to-do list. And so when they are executing those things, they can never go back and actually measure if it's working, if it's achieving what they're trying to achieve, because they don't know what it's actually actually trying to achieve. I have podcast episodes out there that are all about how to know if you're following a strategy or not. And this is really what we're talking about. When you are planning, if you don't actually have a strategy or an understanding of basic marketing principles around brand awareness, around consumer trust, around consumer community building or conversion rates or certain key performance indicators that we're trying to grow in the process, you will be stuck just with to-do lists. And again, this is going to make you train like that Olympian as opposed to really understanding what your goal is. You would say, okay, I want to lose 50 pounds. And I say, great, let's go do 5-hour workouts. I'm going to give you, 6,000 calories for you to eat. I'm going to give you all of these major, huge things that we're going to do. But then you sit down and you're like, wait, why am I doing that? How do I know? You never actually step on the scale. You're never actually managing anything. You never actually have any data. You never actually know why we're trying to do this. So what we actually have to do is deep down look at what the objectives are, not just the execution points. Oftentimes, why people don't stick to it is because you are just looking at the execution. So it just feels like you made this major to-do list as opposed to actually having a mission that we are chasing, something that can be measured, something that we can go back to. So if you're feeling like you have one of those two, whether you're just planning based on vibes and what you would love to do without actually really looking at the data, without actually really looking at what is possible, what your capacity is, and what we can actually do in a year, or you might be looking at this and saying, this is what my plan is, but your plan is actually just a to-do list. Those are two of the major root causes of you not being able to actually stick to it. None of those have anything to do with your discipline, have anything to do with your motivation. This should be actually exciting for you because this episode alone will help you reach your goals faster, quicker, and more seamlessly in 2026 if we can do the next 8 steps correctly. When we look at this, a real annual plan looks like it has objectives with something like strengthening your brand identity and increase retention by 20%. Build a repeatable marketing system that grows traffic consistently month over month by 5%. Improve customer retention and increase customer lifetime value by 25%. Diversify your revenue streams so we're not dependent on this one channel. Streamline operations so we can fulfill our orders faster with fewer errors and with less labor. Building a community of aligned people that fuel organic sales with X amount of people. Create one high-performing manufactured product that we can scale sustainably. Those are objectives. Now, the how-to of those things are what we talked about before. And so to really create this, then we can talk about the posting the 5 times a week, showing up daily, launching new offers. What does that look like? That is a tactic. That is not a strategy. That is not an objective. That is not what our goal is. Those are not measurable. It's just do this or don't do it. That is not how annual planning really works. How do we actually do it the right way so you can really stick to it? Because the people that stick to their plans tend to achieve them much faster. First things first is we need to reflect before we project moving forward. I have had a lot of 2026 planning sessions with my clients already. We do those in November or so. And we sit down and I say, okay, let's look at our 2026 plan and let's kind of look at what is working first. My first question is, what did we think of 2025? Because we can't look forward until we look back to see what did we do well, what did we do poorly, what did we think about it, what did we absolutely hate, what did we love, what drained you, what moved the needle, what worked, and what still isn't working. We first have to look behind. Planning without diagnosis is literally repeating the same problems over and over again because we're never actually looking back. We're just constantly looking forward. Reflection is one of the best business growth strategies that you can have. Next one is where this dreamer, planner, and critic comes in. First things first is when any time that we are planning, I first reflect and then I dream. And I say, okay, great. This is what happened before. Now moving forward, when we do this schedule, we do this annual planning next year, how do you want to feel? Where do we want to be? In the perfect world, how are we feeling this time next year based on your goals, based on your vision? In a perfect world, how do we feel? And this is where you can get as aspirational as possible. I don't care. This is where it happens. I want you to dream. I want you to think big. I want you to think big numbers and I want us to get there. So step 2 is to get dreaming with it. In a perfect world, where are we? And you can be doing this while listening to this episode if you want. You can pause it, put on some music, and then come back when you're doing this strategy if that's something that you want. But this can be utilized as kind of like a guided exercise if that would be helpful for you. Or just, go back to step 1 later, go through some of those questions. What worked? What didn't? What drained you? What moved the needle? What surprised you? What were you more or less excited about or not? Then we get dreamy with it. Pause this, put some EDM focused music on for 10 minutes, just get dreamy. In a perfect world, what would your business look like? What would you achieve? What ideal customer would you have? What sales would you have? Who would be representing you? What would your team look like? All of that. Hey, I'm jumping in here for 30 quick seconds for those of you who are loving the podcast but wish we could dive deeper into every episode topic together. I have actually started a completely free podcast community called the Small Business Cafe for exactly this purpose. Inside this community, we dive deeper into every podcast episode, provide bonus resources, and actually host completely free monthly coaching calls with me so you can get your questions answered. Plus, you get to submit your questions for our Friday coaching session episodes and connect with other founders too. If you have been loving being a part of this podcast and want to connect with other brand founders, plus get extra support from me, click the link in the show notes below to join. Now we can look at the builder. When we look at the builder, we get to set few clearer, more strategic goals. Now we're actually trying to figure out how to execute. Now, how can we actually make that dream happen? Now we're starting to look at this of saying, instead of posting more, growing more, selling more, being on more platforms, I want to say, list 3 to 5 core outcomes for the year. Where do we want to be and what really matters for us to be able to really get there? Then we can tie each of these to a metric that we can measure. What are we trying to do? And then we can tie it to a deeper purpose in life and in business. What is our why behind this? And why I say only 3 to 5 is because if you have 42 goals, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to say, you know what? Let's just focus on a few. When we're talking about directing business actions, we are talking about a few very directed business actions. Every time I go into a year, I have like one major focus. I say this year is the year that I do this. This year is the year that I do this. And then I say, okay, in order to do that thing, what is my major focus? What is my North Star? And then I say, okay, in order to do that, I need to tackle these 3 to 5 major objectives. That's what we're trying to do here. What is your North Star? Some people pick a word of the year, whether it's expand, whether it's systemized, whether it's grow, whether it's explode, whatever that might look like for you. That is what you want to do. That is your one goal. We want to have fewer goals because that means more directed action. That means more specific action. Doing more doesn't actually help you grow more. We want specificity in this. And then we want to look at, okay, what are the major objectives that need to happen for that? So if your goal, if your word is ease, we have to look at ease, understand your why. What does ease mean to you? But, it can mean, all right, we need to really manage our team better. We need to have X amount of launches in there that say really makes things more fun for us. We need to streamline our production and our maybe your producing of your product. Where do we actually have to create ease? Those are your clear major objectives in order to get there. And now we're going to be the critic, quote unquote. This is going to be aligning our goals with your actual capacity. So now that we have reflected, we've dreamt, and we've planned a little bit, now we can go and say, all right, what would make us not able to do this? Now we're going to kind of critique it. We're going to be a little bit of like a protagonist here. What are we going to say that why we can't make this happen? And because some of these things might not actually be possible. We might have to say, okay, Maddie, bringing this business to $10,000 to $10 million this year, that's probably a lofty goal unless I'm really willing to, do X, Y, and Z. Is that something we want to do? Who knows? What don't we know right now that we need to? How much can we realistically get done in a year when you have a 9-to-5 and you have 6 kids at home? Who else would we need to hire in order to make this happen? Because if you can't do it, somebody has to. In order for this to happen, what are the holes? Let's poke some holes in it. And why we don't do all of this at the same time is because you can't dream and critique at the same time. You can't plan and dream at the same time. All of these things have to be done at different stages. We have to look at what version of you is creating this? When we go back to that, you created this for your absolute Optimus Prime, right? With the business you have, with the life you have, with the energy you have, with the health issues you have, whatever that might be, this is where your sustainable planning lives. And if you plan unsustainably, you're going to burn out, you're going to abandon it, and you're going to end up not actually having a plan because you've already tossed this plan in the trash by January 15th. So this one is that we have to align our goals with our actual capacity, and we're starting to add more things to the plate of, okay, what don't we know right now to make this plan actually happen? So if you're looking at this and you're saying one of your core outcomes this year is that you want to build a community of 10,000 people that feel really connected to your brand, now is us saying, how do we do that? What are all of those tangible things? And if your tangible things are just a frequency, posting, being relatable, that's not an actual strategy. We need more outcomes here. We need more of this is actually what the tactics are that we're going to do for those pieces. Now that we have an annual plan, we have like an annual, this time next year, this is where we want to be. A North Star per se, we have at the end of next year, this is our one objective, and these are the things that we want to be at. Now we can break the year into quarters. Quarters is about the most that I want to really nitty-gritty plan. When we look at quarters, each quarter we can focus on one main growth focus that builds in order for us to get there, one major kind of improvement, and one kind of sustainable habit. Again, we can't just do everything all at once. Of course, we can be better. We can level up and we can say, okay, I'm going forward with it. But if you're going to try to post every single day on your feed, on your stories, sending an email, blogging, creating a YouTube channel, creating a podcast, doing all of this, all in January, all in Q1, that's absolutely heinous unless you're trying to hire a bunch of people. And so what we want to do is now we can break the quarters into quarterly themes. So going back to our example of ease, if our focus for the year is ease, now we can say, okay, what is our first step to create ease? What is the most immediate thing that we can do? Maybe we need to have some really solid team conversations. That is something from day one that we can do. January 5th, we're going to sit down and we're going to have full team conversations in order to create more ease in everything that's going on. We can look at our production. Where can we really change it? What are we actually working on year over year, month over month, quarter over quarter? This gives the year a structure instead of chaos. We're starting to say, okay, looking forward, this is how we're building ease. This is how we're getting to $100,000 a year. This is how we are going to build ourselves out of burnout. This is how we're going to do these things. Then we create systems, and the systems are how we actually do our monthly and our weekly quote unquote planning. These people that are out here planning 52 weeks, what your objective is, what are we actually going to tangibly do? What is our to-do list for 52 weeks? We all know in 6 months we could have a AI software that pops out of nowhere and all of a sudden your plan is thrown out the window. We don't need to plan week over week exactly what we are doing. That's not going to be helpful. Some of these people are really getting into the nitty gritty. You can plan your quarters. You should have Q1 planned as we go into Q1. We should have an overall theme for all 4 quarters going into Q1. We should have an overall goal and outcomes that we really want from a revenue perspective, from a personal perspective, from a financial perspective, from a sales, from a community, all of these perspectives, we can have that. But now when we're looking at monthly and weekly, what are systems that we can put in place that allow us to stay consistent? These might be habits. These might be actions. How do you stay consistent? What supports you daily or weekly to do this? What removes friction? What keeps you moving even when you don't feel motivated? Where do we have to put systems in place in order to get there? Your systems matter much more than your vision board. Your vision board is something to redirect you. Your vision board is something to, again, kind of strive for. It's aspirational. It creates motivation. Your systems is what actually keeps you consistent. So are you building out a calendar? Do you have a project management software? What are your non-negotiables? Something else that I have learned this last year that it has been really helpful is these floors and these ceilings. What are your non-negotiables on every day that you absolutely have to execute every single month, every single week? So for me, my non-negotiables are 2 podcasts a week, are at least 3 feed posts a week on Instagram, are daily stories. I would say 3 to 5 daily stories 3 to 5 days a week of stories on Instagram in order for my business to continue to function, as well as, of course, my client support as well. And so those are my daily non-negotiables. But then, we also have a ceiling above that. We don't want to just do our non-negotiables every week. We can also do things on top of that when we're feeling better. But how do we actually create these systems? Do you have a calendar you follow? Do you have time management ideas in there? Those systems is how you stay consistent. Step 7 is reverse engineering your final destination, which we've kind of been doing, but this is where we get into the nitty-gritty a little bit. So we look at your annual goal. We look at this North Star. Then we look at, we want to be here. We've looked at what percentage of your retention did we want to increase, your community, how much did we want it to increase, your revenue, how much did we want it to increase. Now we can look at the quarters and set quarterly goals, and then we can kind of set those monthly actions, and then we set those non-negotiables that we kind of have to do moving forward. This is where most people really fail. It's because all they do is they look at the end game and they say, in order for me to get there, every week for 52 weeks, I'm doing the same old thing. I need to post every day. I'm going to launch 6 different things. I'm going to do all of this stuff. It's just going to be rinse and repeat until we build to there. But what ends up happening is what gets you there might not have got you here. You have to change. We have to adapt as the year goes on. So even looking at that of saying, okay, there's different objectives. It's not all just the same objective. When we're scaling, it really doesn't just marketing and sales. Like I said, if we're talking about ease, our different themes might be quarter 1 is team, quarter 2 is systems, quarter 3 is production, and quarter 4 is finding the gaps when Christmas is crazy. So that might be our ease that we are trying to build this year, but every quarter has this different theme. Now we can go and we can say, okay, quarter 1's theme is team. What do we have to do with our team? Who do we need to hire? What mentor do we need? Who do we need to have a conversation with? How can we actually tangibly do that, right? If your goal is to make your first 6 figures, your quarters might be, first I need to learn how to actually market and sell my product. That might be Q1. Q2 might be trying to optimize our marketing and starting to expand. And maybe your Q2 is all about expansion. So, when I teach people marketing and sales in 90 days inside a PTP, a lot of times their Q1 looks like that. Their Q2 is going to look like visibility. So that might be your theme for Q2. You just need to pump people through that. Now that we know your marketing and your sales is super effective, Q2 is visibility. Q3 might be refinement on what do we need to do. Maybe that's launching new products for the holiday season. And then Q4 is going to be finding your gaps. Because again, Q4 is a test for what we do in the first 3 quarters. So from your annual goals, we then find those quarterly themes, and then we look at these monthly actions. And again, I don't like to plan more than Q1 at a monthly action, because then when we go into Q2, we can say, again, we need to reflect on the last quarter and then look at the next quarter. What do we need to adjust? If you do weekly planning right now, it's going to change and you're never going to stick to it. You're just going to end up doing it again. It's a waste of time. This is where most people fail, is they just say, okay, this is where I want to go. What do I need to do? I'm going to create this one action item list that I'm going to do every single week, and I'm going to habit track it, and I'm going to do all of these things every week for the next 52 weeks. You burn out from that. It doesn't actually ever change. Nothing actually works. And then you're like, all right, now my whole plan is in the trash, right? We actually have to have themes. This is what a strategy really means. And then step 8 is just building in accountability and checkpoints along the way. Do you have monthly reviews? Do you have quarterly recalibrations? Do we have realignment moments? Do you have check-ins with mentors? I have plenty of people that pay me for a monthly call for us just to go over how the last month went. Same as quarterly. Some people just want a quarterly check-in. Let's look at your quarter. Let's look at your data going backwards and now moving forwards. Let's look at these monthly action items. Let's look at what are we doing weekly? What do we need to readjust in order to make this happen? This is how you stay on track all year. How you stay on track all year is that you build in accountability, whether it's with yourself, whether it's with a mentor, whether it's with friends, whether it's within your team. I don't care, but you need accountability. Otherwise, March 1st is going to come and you're going to say, all right, I already tossed this plan in the trash. Now what? So when we really look at this, I want you to go back and I want us to first reflect, second, dream, third, plan. How can we actually make this happen? What are all of the things that we feel like we can do? I want you to dump. The first couple of steps here are dump lists. When we reflect, dump it. What did we think? How did we feel? It can be almost journaling. What worked? What didn't? Second, we get to dream. Literally Dream it out. Have an empty sheet of paper, get one of those really big Post-it notes and just dream it out. Step 3, plan. What are the things that you think we need to do in order to make this happen? What are those things? What are those core outcomes? What are some of the to-do list items that we feel like we really need to do? Then we can align with our actual capacities. We're going to critique. What can't we really execute? What might be a little too lofty here? What don't we know how to do right now? What don't we have the team for right now? Because that's also going to add things to your plan. Then we look and we can kind of reverse engineer this. We can look at our annual goals. We looked forward. This is where we want to be. This is our dream. This is where we want to be. We can look at these quarterly themes. This is where we have to go. We can create these monthly actions and we can create into these quarterly themes. Then we create systems. What habits are we putting in place? What checkpoints of accountability are we putting in place? How are we staying consistent? What do we have to do? What do we have to learn? And what are our systems in order to make this happen? How do we actually stay time managed? Because your systems, your habits, and your actions is what actually creates your plan moving forward. Annual planning you actually stick to isn't actually about discipline, motivation, manifestation, what's on the vision board. It's about designing a plan that actually aligns with your reality, supports your lifestyle, moves your business forward strategically, and that is actually rooted in strategy, in something deeper than just action. What you see here, my examples were not, I want to post 5 times a week so I have 10,000 followers. That's not how that works. If you want to have 10,000 followers, we can talk about collaborations. We can talk about maybe having one pillar of content be about growth, but the other 4 can't just be about growth, because growth alone is not going to grow your business. We need growing, we need nurturing, we need selling. It really depends on what your North Star goal is for the year. If your goal is to hit your first 6 figures versus if your goal is to hit your $5 million year and you have a 10-person team and you have all of these other things, your action plans are going to look very different, but this is the structure that we want to do it in. One of the most important things to look at when we are looking at a plan is, what don't we know? What can't I do yet? Too many people create a plan without critiquing it. We have to critique it, because that is where it points out our current gaps. That is where we say, we have to make this change. I have to hire this person. I have to build in this system. I need to add this AI automation. These are the things that actually allow for this to happen. So we have to have all stages of this. Step 1, we want to reflect. Step 2, dream. Step 3, we want to plan. Step 4, we want to critique. Step 5, we want to break it into quarterly themes. Step 6, we want to systemize. Step 7, we want to really build out that reverse engineered system. We want to say, okay, what does Q1 really look like if we are reverse engineering our quarterly goals? Step 8 is then building in accountability. If you don't have people in your corner to hold you accountable, to bounce ideas off of, to ask questions to go to when you're feeling terrible and you want to tear it all down, we need this level of accountability and connection and checkpoints with other people, especially if you don't have a team. If you're a solopreneur, really important. But also, if you do have a team, we still need this, because a lot of times you can't go to your team when you're like, hey, I want to shut this business down, right? We need to have these people in your corner. If you don't have friends, we need to find this community so we can have this accountability points. A client came to me last week for a 2026 planning session. She had like 15 launches and promotions for the next year. And she said, what do you think of this launch and promo calendar? And I asked her if she was excited looking at it. And she was like, I'm kind of exhausted and I'm kind of uninspired. I'm just like, it is what it is. That is not how I want you to feel at the end of this exercise. During your planning should be the last time that you're feeling uninspired. Literally during your planning, you should be like wanting to bounce off the walls, being like, let's freaking go. I'm so dang excited about this. What we did in that session is I said, okay, let's scrap it. Go back to the dream. If you're not excited about this launches and this promo calendar that you're coming to me with, we went and we did this. By the end, she was excited. We had launches and promotions she was excited about, but it was because why she was feeling uninspired was because she felt drained in other areas of her business, of her team. She was like, I just feel like it's going to take so much of me to execute that. I said, well, what about your team? What about these other people that we have that are executing these things? Let's first focus there. And so in order for us to be more excited about your business, when we reflected, she was like, I feel like I have a 9-to-5. I feel like I'm just showing up and doing the things. I said, okay, let's crack that code right now. So the root cause she thought was, let's grow sales, let's do these other things. But then I said, okay, this is your goal for growing sales. I'm uninspired. I'm not even excited about it. Let's figure out that root cause, because what you see might not always be what actually needs to change and what actually needs to happen. Your planning should make you inspired. And if it's not, we probably have a deeper rooted cause elsewhere. We have to look at your team. We have to look at your systems. Is your product handmade that you're like, I can't even imagine making $1 million worth of this handmade product? Maybe we need to start looking at manufacturing, right? This is where we have to actually look at some of these aligned strategic models that are a little bit deeper than this as well. I just want to let everybody know that a change is coming to the podcast in the next couple of days. By our January 2nd episode, we have a very big announcement going on. Keep your eye out. If you have any questions on your 2026 goals and plan, please, my DMs are open. You guys know that I love to see your business. I love to see the listeners. I love to talk to you. I want to know what your business is all about. I can cater my episodes better when I actually talk to you, because I get to see what your questions are. I get to see what your business is, what your brand is. So please come over to my Instagram at This Is Madison Page. If you have any questions, my DMs are always open there. If you are looking to connect with me, DM me, connect. If you want to book a complimentary business audit with me in the new year, and we will basically dive into your hidden opportunities to scale. We can look at your plan and say, how do we actually strategically make this happen? If you want to do a complimentary business audit with me, you can DM me, connect, and we can dive into that. Or if you want to work with me, you can just DM me support on Instagram. If you're looking to work with me in the new year, you're looking to have me in your business. If you don't know, I do work one-on-one with all of my business clients that I do work with. So it's not just like, here's a course. I'm not a course creator. I am a growth specialist that comes in and I really dive into the weeds with you. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can also DM me support. This is step 2 of our Planning for 2026 series. If you didn't listen to step 1, go back and you can listen to that one. But step 3 is coming out in a couple of days. This is going to be about strategies and our predictions and our trends moving forward in 2026 of what we expect to be necessary for you from a strategic perspective. What we put out last time was what the consumers want. Next is what I think is actually going to be the overall result of those consumer desires. I'm so excited to execute my 2026 with you. There's a lot to come in the podcast. Again, there is a little bit of an announcement coming in the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for that. You can follow us on Instagram if you're worried about missing it, but head on over to my Instagram at This Is Madison Page and let me know what you thought about this episode. Subscribe to the podcast. We put out new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. I love you. I'm rooting for you. I'm in your corner always. I will see you in the next episode. If you found today's episode helpful and are looking for more tangible ways to grow your business, make sure you are subscribed to the show. If you want to dive deeper into this topic more, click the link in the show notes and join our completely free podcast community where we dive into every single podcast topic, as well as give some bonus support and free coaching calls. And finally, if you are interested in getting my eyes on your business to find your hidden opportunities to scale, apply to work with me one-on-one in the show notes or on our website. Remember, it's not enough to listen. Don't forget to implement too. I love ya. I'll see you in the next episode.